This video is a critique of Sam Harris' claim that free will is an illusion. I'm not going to dispute the truth claims made in this video, but rather suggest that the concept of free will is not in the purview of science.
So if the scientific community were ever to declare free will an illusion, as I think we eventually must, I think it would precipitate a culture war far more acrimonious than the one that has been waged on the subject of evolution.
And yet the scientific community has already declared free will to be an illusion because the materialist point of view of the world, which is the most prominent in the field of science, necessitates that brain activity sets off causal relationships, which in turn lead to our actions, our behavior.
Now, the popular conception of free will seems to rest on two assumptions. The first is that each of us was free to behave differently than we did in the past. You became a fireman, and yet you could have become a policeman. You chose chocolate, but you could have chosen vanilla. It certainly seems like this is the world we're living in.
The perspective of science is a perspective on the world of objects and causal relationships. Our subjectivity does not figure into this. We don't use pronouns. And when something seems to be a certain way, we are referring to the first-person perspective of a subjective individual. So we're sort of jumping outside the realm of science when we refer to how things seem to be. How things seem to be relate to our capacity to be mistaken. We perceive the world and we assess the information that we take in, and we make judgments from that. This has to do with our subjectivity, and it is outside the analysis of objects. Sam Harris is a neuroscientist, and he's seeing the brain as a very complex object.
The second assumption is that we are the conscious source of our thoughts and actions. And so that your experience of wanting to do something is in fact the proximate cause of your doing that something. You feel that you want to move, and then you move. You are doing it. You, the conscious witness of your life. Now, unfortunately, we know that both of these assumptions are just untrue.
It's not that these assumptions are untrue, it's just that they're not relevant from the perspective of interpersonal relations. So the concept of free will is a concept that is relevant to our interpersonal relationships. When you encounter another person, you do not conduct a scientific analysis to determine why it is they're doing what they're doing, why it is they're saying what they're saying. We relate to each other directly.
Consider a generic serial killer. His choice to commit his last murder was determined by neurophysiological events in his brain, which were in turn determined by prior causes. Bad genes, the developmental effects of an unhappy childhood, a night of lost sleep because a car alarm was going off down the street. These events precede any conscious decision to...
So it's not your conscious experience of decision-making which determine your thoughts and actions, according to Sam Harris. Rather, it's neurophysiological events in your brain, which were set off by prior causal relations, your genetic predispositions, the things your family said to you when you were a kid. All of these things are really what contribute to what you do and say. And yet, these things make you who you are. You are your neurophysiological actions. That's you. Your genetic predispositions, that's you. That's part of you. The things that were said to you when you're on the playground in elementary school contribute to who you are. And these things in turn contribute to what you do and say. There is no illusion here.
And understanding this truth about the human mind has the potential to change our sense of moral goodness and what it would mean to create a just society. question of free will touches nearly everything people care about: religion, public policy, politics, the legal system, feelings of personal accomplishment, emotions like guilt and pride and remorse. So much of human life seems to depend on our viewing one another as conscious agents capable of free choice.
So now we're back into the realm of interpersonal relations where accountability matters. If you were a scientist studying the human mind, you would not interview someone to understand their brain activity. If you are encountering an individual and you want to know how they're doing today, you simply ask them, how are you doing? And if you're asked how you're doing, you don't have to have a scientific analysis to answer the question. You can bypass all other methods of discovery and simply explain how you feel. The perceived controversy here between the concept of free will and science is nothing new. Kant covered it in his Critique of Pure Reason, and it's centuries old. Roger Scruton has a beautiful analogy in his book on human nature. Scruton compares human subjectivity to a painting, let's say a portrait. We can conduct a scientific analysis on a painting by deciphering where the pigments came from, what they're made out of. We could plot the different undulations in the texture of the paint and come up with all sorts of information about that painting. And yet, if we do not see that the portrait is a portrait, we're not seeing the painting correctly. The face that emerges from a painted portrait is not an illusion in the sense that you are mistaken to see the face. In the same way, the concept of free will is not an illusion in the sense that we're mistaken by our experience of consciousness. A scientific analysis of a work of art may lead us to many facts about the work of art as a physical object, but it does not lead us to see and recognize the face that is painted in the portrait. Similarly, studying the human brain will not lead you to understanding or recognizing an individual person. A historian may study an individual person, a journalist maybe, but a scientist studies the Homo sapien, and all matters relating to personal subjectivity simply do not figure.